50% of children are sexually abused. That's 1 out of 2.
What the children don't understand is, first of all, when they upload something on the internet, it is being stored somewhere in some hard drive.
Children and youngsters, especially teenagers, can be groomed either in person or in the online world by a stranger or by someone they know.
And you don't want the information of your children, your photos, things like that, being there on the dark and deep web.
Hi, I'm Tina. I'm the mother of a school-going child. I hope this video helps in increasing our awareness and keeping our children safe. In this video, I explain about what is child sex abuse, the types of child sex abuse, what is grooming, some statistics about child sex abuse, dangers of the online world, and measures that a school can do to protect the children in this context. First, let's see who's a child. Anybody who is under the age of 18 is defined as a child, a minor. On completing 18 years of age, he or she becomes an adult, a major. So what is grooming? It's a process where a sexual predator identifies and engages with his victim. He'll gain the trust of the child, he or she, and then build a relationship with the child and have a trust-based and an emotional connection with the child, and then manipulate the child into performing or permitting a sexual act. If necessary, this perpetrator will gain access also to the child's caretakers or the parents, so that the parents or any other authority figures trust this perpetrator. To a child, this kind of trust looks very nice. Grooming is not traumatic to the child. It's a nice procedure. The child feels good. The child feels trusted by an adult or by somebody older to him or her. They have an older person to confide with, to hang out with. So the child feels good while he or she is being groomed by the perpetrator. Now the perpetrator may be, like I already said, a male or a female. Children and youngsters, especially teenagers, can be groomed either in person or in the online world by a stranger or by someone they know. So let's see how grooming happens. One of the ways is establishing and forming a relationship with the victim. They will pretend to have a romantic relationship as though they are romantically attracted towards the victim, as though they are falling in love with the victim. Another relationship is the place of a mentor. A mentor is like a guide, a person to whom the child and probably the child's parents also look up to. So a mentor could be a spiritual teacher in a place of spiritual worship where the family and the child look up to. Also authority figures who are in authority over the child, teacher, headmaster, sports coach, music teacher, and a dominant figure. Maybe in a family, people say, we all look up to this person, we'll only listen to what this person says or suggests. So there's a dominant person in a social setting. Another common methodology that a perpetrator uses to groom a victim is by expressing similar interests, especially in the online space. So they can use the same sites, games and apps as young people, and they spend time learning about this person's interest, this particular victim that they have in mind. They learn about their interests and use this to build a relationship with that person. And then they may continue this relationship online as well. So they use social media networks like Facebook, Instagram, and they use text messaging and messaging apps like WhatsApp, Messenger, Snapchat, Instagram DM, Be Real, etc. They sometimes may use email, other text and voice and video chats in public forums, common forums, and gaming apps like Roblox, Fortnite, PUBG, etc. So in grooming, some of the tactics that a perpetrator may use is, whether online or in person, is pretending to be younger than they really are so that they can establish a peer connection with the victim. And then they give advice and they pretend like they're very understanding in nature. They may give gaming advice or just, generally life advice. The child may have a fight at home with the parents or trouble in school, and then they will advise this person. And they may buy gifts, real gifts or online gift coupons and the like. They'll, of course, on the online space, play games alongside them. They may also have metaverse and VR, that is virtual reality sexual interactions. They show special attention to the victim, to the child, and they may take them on trips, outings or holidays if that kind of access is available. As for the consequences in the online space, children know more than we think they know. And sometimes children know more than what we know. Today's youngsters are very well equipped. Parents sometimes are ill equipped to handle the children's online and technological knowledge. Even an 8-year-old can take a phone, snap a photo, and send it to another person. Say they can take a snap with the family at the beach and send it to an uncle or an aunt. So it's fairly simple and easy nowadays to get on the online space. For more information on the online space, I'll let my husband Nachi talk about it.
I'm Nachi. I'm a social media and digital media consultant. But above all that, I am the father of a school-going child. So even though I have worked for more than 20 years in the online media space, and I teach this and I train people and I consult and I work with large organizations, NGOs, nonprofits, all of that. But above all that, as a father, I think a lot about how online digital media, social media impacts our children. Social media and digital world, they are great innovations. They have a lot of usefulness. There's a lot of implications and applications to our real world. But essentially, these are all tools created for adults. These are created for commerce, for helping people in many ways, but they're all for grown-ups. They're not designed with children in mind. So it's really important for us as parents and as people who deal with children to understand this. So I've had this training with children in schools. I have taught and trained people who work with children, academicians. I want to share with you a few things that are important for you to know. Apart from this, I'll also give some source links and research links in the document that is attached with this video, so you can do your own research. But I'll just take a few minutes and give you some high-level thoughts. First thing is, children are often not educated about what happens after they share or post something on social media. They just don't think about the implications. They just don't even know what happens after that. They just think it's an app, and for example, if they post something on WhatsApp or some messaging app or on social media, they are very interested in this. Obviously, you can see they are interested in devices and these social networks and so on, because they are designed to keep children hooked into the system. We call it gamification, which means it's like a game. Every app that is designed for social media is gamified, which means they give them rewards. It triggers certain hormones in the brain that keeps them happy. They just keep doing things because they have these dopamine triggers and so on. So children are often, they are interested, they are almost in some cases addicted to this, but they do not understand the implications of what happens after they share. For example, many children that I speak to do not understand how the data is transmitted. Right? So when you post something on social media or on a messaging app or something, what happens is it transfers that information over to the company's servers. So it's basically a set of computers. So these computers access and store this information. And not only they store, it is copied into many servers, multiple servers all over the world. In the sense, it makes copies of that photo in multiple computers, for the easiest way of understanding it. This is called mirroring, and they do it for backup. The reason that the companies do it is because if something happens in one location, the data will be safe in another location. That's why they call it mirroring. But basically, it's like making copies of these things. So what the children don't understand is, first of all, when they upload something on the internet, it is being stored somewhere in some hard drive, in some place. They can call it cloud, they can call it whatever the name it is, but it's basically stored in somebody's custody. So it's important for children to understand that. As adults, we make choices, but as children, they don't even know. I've heard lots of stories of children posting things they shouldn't be posting, saying things they shouldn't be saying, because they don't think. They're just children, right? So they just move forward and they just do it, and in the spur of the moment. And then there are implications which they don't understand. First of all, I want to say it's important for children to understand and be educated about it. But more than that, it's for you also as parents to understand that this is what is happening. It's not like there can be privacy, the words like privacy, end-to-end encryption, all of these are thrown around. So suddenly you feel, oh, it's safe. Nothing has happened so far. So you also feel it's safe. You have to think about it, especially when it comes to children-related things. So speak to your children, educate them. Second is access to shared information. So the moment you post something on the internet, who has access to it? Companies. They have access to it. They are all commercial organizations. Have you heard of any not-for-profit kind of people creating social network? No, these are commercial businesses that have commercial interest. That is their primary interest. So they will do everything possible for their commerce to grow, which is what they say they are. We can't even blame them because they say it upfront. The thing is, we need to understand that when it comes to our children and our children's data and their communication on digital social media, these companies have access to those details. I know many people in the industry that don't even share pictures of their children. Once there was a thing where CEO of a large social media network didn't even put pictures of his child for a long time. And there was a big thing about it because he knows what happens, right? So these companies have access to it. This data is proprietary to them. In a way, they own it. They own that data. And then there is this concept of big data where they mine these things. They take all this data and they mine it. Now, all of these are at least for commercial purpose. There is some kind of a law and regulations in some countries, depending on the country's law and privacy policies and so on. But the bigger point is there is something called the deep web or the dark web. These are areas like things that you cannot track. These are people who take this information and it goes into the deep and what we call as deep web or dark web. And these are things that you can't even track. This happens under the surface, right? You would have heard of hacking and things like that. So these are people who do things in a stealthy manner, and you don't want the information of your children, your photos, things like that, being there on the dark and deep web with people that you don't want these things to be with. So it is important for you to take these protective environments. And today with artificial intelligence, VR and AR and all these high computing power, it's very easy for people to manipulate pictures or create things that are not even real. There are these things called deep fakes. So you can even create fakes of children. All they need is one photo, one piece of data and information that can be taken and converted to anything for that matter. And what does these things do? They have long-term implications with the children. It implicates their future, their career maybe. When they grow up, and these things are not going to be gone. Internet is there forever. Social media is there forever. Storing these things somewhere. So something might surface after 20 years, after 15 years, after 10 years, which might impact the career of the child. And these are things we need to think about. And not just that, the mindset, their social life. What happens if they see a picture after 15 years, which they are not even supposed to see? What happens to those relationships at that point in time? Maybe they moved on, but these things can bring back memories, can impact the children in ways that we cannot even imagine. There are lots of implications related to online and social media and the digital world when it comes to children, and we need to be thinking about it as responsible parents.
What is child sex abuse? When an adult interacts with a child for their own sexual gratification, it's called child sex abuse. Now, abuse may be perpetrated by an adult or by a bigger and more powerful child. When it comes to child sex abuse, both girls and boys are vulnerable. Child sex abuse is a health and social concern. It's also a crime punishable by law. There are two types of child sex abuse. One is contact abuse and the other is non-contact abuse. Next, we'll see non-contact or non-touching behaviors of child sexual abuse. Exhibitionism or flashing or exposing one's genital organs to a child. Having obscene conversations or phone calls or text messages or any kind of digital interaction with a child over a smartphone. Showing pornography to a child, photographing a child in sexual poses, coercing, forcing or encouraging a child to watch or hear sexual acts either in person or on a video through the computer or a phone. Watching a child undress or use the bathroom or a dressing room with sexual intent. An adult exposing their private parts online to a child. Coercing or forcing a child to expose their private parts either by videos or photos online. Coercing or forcing children to view or share other sex abuse images or videos. Producing, owning or sharing pornographic materials involving children. So if a person receives a pornographic image and shares it with another person, it is a crime. And exposing children to sexual acts online and making them watch it. Non-contact abuse may not necessarily be traumatic or violent while it is happening. For example, a perpetrator may feel the child feel empowered removing their clothes. They make the child feel special, they make the child feel beautiful, they make the child feel needed. So they psychologically play on a young child or teenager's mind, and it may not be traumatic at the time. But later, as the child or teenager understands that what happens was abuse, or worse still, if the images or videos are being shared online, then it is extremely traumatic and psychologically very damaging to the child or teenager in question. We have to remember that anybody under 18 is a child. Contact abuse, also called touching behaviors of abuse. These include fondling a child or sexually touching a child's body in general, not just the private parts, but generally touching a child's body with a sexual intent. It also includes touching a child's private parts. If an adult encourages a child to touch their private parts or each other's private parts, this also includes abuse. If an adult encourages a child to touch their private parts, this is also child sex abuse. Rubbing one's genitals against a child's body with or without clothing, making a child touch someone else's private parts, or playing sexual games like pants down or shirts up or something like that, and kissing a child with a sexual intent or intention, and intercourse. We see various other definitions of child sex abuse, including sex trafficking. One thing that needs to be understood about contact abuse is that it's not necessarily violent or traumatic while it is happening. At the time of abuse, it may be pleasurable to the child. It may be similar to tickling, because the feeling they experience at that time, the physical feeling that they experience, makes them happy. So similarly, child sex abuse may not be always violent and painful. Perpetrators may be able to abuse children without the children feeling trauma at that time. But as they grow older later on and realize that what happened was abuse, then it causes psychological trauma and damage. Now, who is this happening to? And we hear reports on the news and the media about child sex abuse. We think it's happening to somebody somewhere. So who's this happening to? According to a 2007 study conducted by the Ministry of Women and Child Development, 1 out of every 2 children, that is 50% of children, are sexually abused. That's 1 out of 2. So it's a huge number. And it may be happening to people within our own circles. Tulir, a Chennai-based NGO, along with Save the Children, conducted a study in 2005, and in this they found that 48% of boys and 39% of girls that they interviewed had been abused. We live in a conservative society where speaking about sex is taboo, more so about child sex abuse. So, if we look at these numbers, we have to understand and assume and know that the real numbers are much, much higher than this, because cases will be underreported and unnoticed even. So the real numbers are shocking, appalling, and scary. Now let us look at the role of the school in prevention of child sex abuse. The National Commission for the Protection of Child Rights says that a complaints or grievance committee for child sex abuse has to be instituted in a school that the children are aware of and can easily approach. All teaching, non-teaching, contractual and other staff members should be sensitized about the CSA committee and about child safety laws. All teaching and non-teaching staff should be specifically trained to be alert to the signs and indicators of child sex abuse. Parents and students must be sensitized from time to time about the child protection policy, the guidelines and the child laws, and about reporting mechanisms. There should be a verification protocol for recruitment and a procedure in place for teaching, non-teaching, contractual, voluntary and other staff before they are allowed to work alongside children in a campus where children are. When we send our children to school, we send them with the knowledge that it is a safe place and that all the employees in the school premises, whether teaching or non-teaching, are screened and have character references, and that they do not hold a criminal record in the area of child sex abuse. So we trust the school to be a safe place. But if general public is allowed to access the school premises on an ongoing basis, and by general public it could mean anybody, totally unconnected individuals from outside, or it could be adult relatives of the children of the school, it could be the parents of the children of the school, it could be old students or their adult relatives, whoever it is. If it's an adult that is not in any kind of employment with the school, teaching or non-teaching or contractual, then they are outsider adults, they are members of the general public. Now, if they have to access the school premises for a vocational training program or a project of some sort, which involves the access of the school premises by adults who cannot be checked or referenced, then the school is no longer a safe place and it becomes a grooming ground for potential child sex offenders and abusers. This is the difference between a shopping mall or a park, which is a public space where we have to be extra careful and monitor our children. Below a certain age, we don't send them alone, and beyond a certain age, we tell them how to be careful. But a school, on the other hand, is a place where children go to every single day. And we trust that the people who are there are safe and that there are safety mechanisms in place for the children to be safe. There is a possibility of sex offenders amongst such a crowd who have ongoing access to a school, and there is a possibility of them interacting with the students of the school, grooming the children, especially slightly older children and teenagers, and then sexually abusing them. I'm not saying that the abuse will happen necessarily in the school. It may or may not. But if the child has interactions that allow an exchange of phone numbers or a messaging ID or an app or a gaming app where they reveal their ID names or something like that, and then after that, this individual is outside the school but is on the online space having access to a student of the school with the potential to sexually abuse them. All they need is to exchange phone numbers. And once a WhatsApp chat or something like that starts, then it's already out of hand and it has the potential to grow into sex abuse of some sort, either in the real world or on the online space, and has the potential to greatly damage a child's psychology and future. If members of the public have to access the school for a training program or a project or anything of that sort, then they should have completely separate entrances which are exclusively accessible only by these outsiders or strangers, and also that the physical spaces or the rooms where they use for a training program or a project or whatever it is are completely physically walled off, where there is no possible contact, physical contact or verbal contact with the student of the school. This has to be physically impossible. It can't be said that the contact will be minimal, the interaction will be very less. No, the interaction has to be nil. They should not access the common corridors. They should not access common pathways. No common eating places. They should not access common spaces like toilets, even if it's for the adults. I mean, they should be just completely isolated and have separate access and exit. There should be absolutely no physical possibility of an interaction between these strangers who access the school premises and a child of the school. In that case, there is no potential harm for the child. But if not, students are in potential danger, and this is something that parents should be very concerned about. I hope this video helps in increasing our awareness and keeping our children safe.